Hey guys, it's 8 Deadly Sin here coming at you with another Champion Select analysis for the day 2 of NALCS. This is going to be the Immortals versus TIP game. Honestly, Immortals, one of my favorite teams to analyze Champ Select because they just seem to have such a good read on the meta. I mean, I know a lot of people are jumping on the bandwagon. I would advise against that just because I think it's not so much that they're an amazing, talented team, but even though they have amazing draft and picks and strategies in that, but I just feel like a lot of the teams do not have a strong read on the meta, so until those teams catch up, I think Immortals is going to be very, very dominant, just basing this off picks and drafts specifically, and how that enables them to do these really, really fast games. So if you guys don't know, this is the perfect game that Immortals had. I believe it ended in under 20 minutes. This is a really, really nice game, and I'm going to show you how these picks allow them to be able to end the game so fast in comparison to other NALCS teams that are taking hour-long games during a meta in which you should be able to end every game before 40 minutes. So let's jump right into bans. First bans from Immortal is Graves. Now, I really like this ban in the sense that Graves is an extremely strong jungler right now, does an immense amount of damage, especially armor shredding damage, which is pretty much everything he's going to be able to do. He's going to be getting those ghost blades, he's going to be getting that shred damage, he's going to be able to one-shot squishier members of the team, and honestly, I love this ban because what they're doing is they're putting this in place of a Kindred ban, where Kindred is squishy enough where you can completely, if you land one CC piece of CC on Kindred, you can blow her up right before she even has the ability to cast her ult, and it's just squishy in that sense that she can be also poked out, making her ineffective, while Graves not only brings the AD damage that a Kindred would bring into the jungle, but also it has more tank and sustain than a Kindred, and being able to stay longer in those team fights and not get chunked out. So a very good, smart ban coming from Immortals. Next, the first ban from TIP, second ban in the game, is going to be the Rek'Sai. This is specifically targeted to Reignover. Reignover has historically pretty much always played Rek'Sai, regardless of Reignover's Rek'Sai play has always been extremely good, and honestly, I can kind of see where TIP would think that this would be a really good ban, but I don't even think Rek'Sai is one of the top junglers. I would think either, instead of banning the Rek'Sai, ban the Elise is what I would say. Ban Elise or pick Elise, depending on how you want to do this, or ban Fiora, Lissandra, or Lulu. Those are all really good red side bans that I think would have been way more useful than the Rek'Sai ban. And if you wanted to ban a jungler for coming from the red side, I would ban Elise if they want to stick with that jungle target ban. But otherwise, I would say ban the Fiora, ban the Lissandra, ban the Lulu. Those are all way stronger picks, especially when you're on red side and you're not able to first pick that. Now, the next ban coming out from Immortals is going to be the Poppy. Again, I somewhat like this ban. I'm kind of on the fence. Honestly, Poppy's a really good support right now. The ability to engage is insane with her E, as well as just the disengage with her ultimate, as well as engage factor of her ultimate. If you actually cast it without charging it at all, it directly knocks a bunch of the members straight up right above Poppy, rather than knocking them farther away in a disengage sense. It really allows you to get better positioning and set up a lot of damage for the team fights, as well as her ability to stop those dashes and such and escapes, both for disengaging and also like preventing an escape. That's her W that allows her to do that, as well as just the CC that she can get by playing off the walls and structure of the bot lane. I think a very strong support for them to ban out. Honestly, really no complaints about this ban. Other bans that I would suggest would be maybe Trundle in the same vein, as he's a really good support as well, but I think Poppy is probably a bit better to ban. The next ban coming out is going to be Gangplank from TIP. Honestly, this is a really good ban coming out from TIP. It's going to be pretty much an 100% red side ban pretty much all season, unless something really spectacular happens with the meta shift. Just Gangplank does so much damage in the sense that he has so much AoE damage, as well as the ability to direct and control team fights with the barrels, and that does a lot of armor shredding as well, so it just increases the damage tenfold, as well as the ability to get the crits off it, especially if you have IE. Then the global presence of his ult, being able to facilitate dives while also mitigating dives of the enemy team, is very useful, and just, and the wave clear and such coupled, he literally has a perfect kit and does an insane amount of damage, so a very good ban coming from TIP. Alright, the next ban and final ban for Immortals is going to be Tahm Kench. Honestly, another really strong meta ban right now, especially for the team comp that they're going to end up going for. Now, what Tahm Kench does best is he just becomes a super tank. Even into the mid game, he becomes super tanky just from his gray health shield that he can do, meaning he's pretty much two frontliners in one. Also, he's super annoying in team fights because if he's able to get his 3 stacks on you, he's able to devour you. Not only does the devour do a massive amount of damage, I believe that's percentage health magic damage on the spit out factor, but it also is allowed to kind of break up and fragment team fights, not only with the mobility of his ult, being able to get directly up in your face and absorb all that damage and really fragment and push the back line off, reducing the damage that people would have in these mid-game team fights, but also the ability to devour, friendly carries and also provide that bit of disengage and safety for that. So I think a very safe ban, especially for the really mid-game, fast-paced gameplay that Immortals is going to be drafting. A very smart ban coming from them. Now, the final ban in the game is going to be the Rise. Honestly, in the context of how Immortal likes to play, I wouldn't necessarily say that you should ban this, but Tip obviously doesn't want to deal with a late-game Rise. I think it's also a very smart ban. It still does an insane amount of damage. Both Polbelter and Huni probably could take this in either the top or mid lane. I think it's a very, decent ban, especially a red side ban. Don't want them to first pick that. Honestly, my only other suggestion would be, instead of the Rek'Sai, ban all those other things that I've already mentioned, but instead of the Rise, I would definitely ban Lulu. I think Lulu is way stronger, especially if you looked at day one and how Immortals plays the game. Obviously, Tip isn't the best team in the North American LCS, mostly because they're dealing with a sub-roster, so I understand that and why they would want to get that Rise, which seems like a lot more popularized ban, but I think a Lulu would have been a lot smarter in the context of the game. And now going into the first pick, here's that Lulu picked up for Immortals. I think that's just the perfect, honestly, first pickup. There's a lot of things left open that I think are very strong, but I think Lulu is the one that you really, really need to pick up, especially really fast, because I think Tip also recognizes that Lulu would be a strong pick. But the reason Lulu is so strong is, first, Lulu was always good in the sense that she could buff up individual members of the team and kind of you make those protect the COG comps, protect the AD carry comps, but now what she's really good, not only is she really good in lane, because with Thunderlord she can do a massive amount of damage, and Thunderlord's pretty much is guaranteed to proc by able to put on the Whimsy, and with the auto attacks that she can get out is able to almost guaranteed proc that every time that it's up in lane, and her early and mid game damage is still insane as it always was, but she never experiences the slump that she historically did in that kind of post 35 minutes where all she became was an ult bot, because the games, if League of Legends is played correctly, never is really going to be able to get to that post 40 minute mark, and rarely ever does, or should rarely happen on this patch, the way the meta is structured itself and what is strong right now. So I think that this Lulu is a perfect pick, especially for this mid game focused team skirmishing that they really want to do on Immortals, that allows them to, take and snowball those objectives. I'll get into that once we talk about the entire team comp, but let's go into the second pick phase. Second pick phase for Tip is going to be picking up the Lucian and the Nidalee. Now, the Lucian, I think, is probably the best pick of the entire game for TIP, especially just in the context of the meta and how strong Lucian is. Lucian is probably my second ranked top 80 carry right now in 6.1, the first being Corki, and I'll get into that why when I analyze the Corki pick for Immortals, but just in the context, Lucian is probably the strongest. I would rank the strongest in lane 80 carry, just in the senses he has the wave clear to just keep pushing up the lane and bully out any other 80 carry, as well as the damage that comes out from the constant casting of Piercing Lights, which can do a massive amount of poke, as well as his passive that allows him to get even more damage, rapid fire damage right on there. His E allows for nice trade dodging, as well as the ability to kind of escape any potential ganks or anything by able to dodge those skill shots. So he's just very strong. The culling provides a nice chunk of wave clear, as well as a nice chunk of straight on targeted damage if he can get right up in someone's face with the culling going off. Does an insane amount of damage, very strong, pretty much plays strong into any matchup that you want for the bot lane regardless of it. So it's probably the best 80 carry to be blind picking, especially with putting such a priority on the Lucian. Also, Wild Turtle's performance on the Lucian displayed that he has a very adept understanding of the champion as well, so I think TIP did a good job by stealing that away and trying to dismantle some of that mid-game effect. And since Lucian has such a huge mid-game impact and mid-game team fighting ability, it's a very good pick to be taken away from Immortals, but also kind of using that to bolster their mid-game as well. Now let's get into the Nidalee pick. The Nidalee pick I don't really like, only because Nidalee is so squishy in the sense that she's not going to be able to scale up as much unless you're going for unless you get to the point where you have a lot of itemization. So I don't really think that it's a good choice in the sense that it's very squishy, can be easily, poked out and killed, but they don't obviously know what the entire Immortals lineup besides the Lulu is right now, so I guess Bebe wants to be on a more comfortable champion. If I had to choose, I would say the best jungler that they could have picked up here would be the Elise, especially since they banned away the Rek'Sai. If you're going to ban away the Rek'Sai, you need to pick up the Elise. Elise is just so strong, probably my favorite jungler right now on patch 6.1, just because of the sheer amount of early game damage that Elise, and within that first 5 minutes, minutes, I'm guaranteeing you Rainover will be getting a kill on this Elise once it's chosen, but anyone should be able to get a kill on Elise within those first 4 minutes in combination with the Thunder procs, Thunder Lord's Keystone that just allows you to do a huge amount of insane burst damage, especially with the high base damage that Elise has, as well as the gank ability. I think it would be a way better choice, but let's talk about the strengths of this Nidalee pick. Strengths of this Nidalee pick is that she has the ability to kind of poke out a lot of people want to bring a lot of poke damage to this TIP lineup that is still remaining a mystery at this point. She's also a flex pick at this point as well. It can go mid and it can go jungle, while I would most likely think that Immortals would predict the jungle Nidalee pick for Bebe, but ultimately it has some flexibility there. It's able to do massive amounts of poke damage with the Q, and the Q allows you to get up nice gank setup. So if you land the Q, which is going to be easier to do since there's less green wards to kind of be able to spot out where those skill shots are originating from, she can be able to jump over and pounce over those walls and try to get those assassinations. And it's still relatively strong early, not as strong as an Elise or Elise Sin, but it's a decent pick. I would have chose the Elise over this if I was actually coaching TIP of what to pick. Now, the next picking phase, that Elise is going to be picked up for Rainover, and this Corki is going to be picked up, which eventually goes to Wild Turtle, but at this point is still a flex pick. So at this point, Immortals has 2 flex picks on the board. They have the Lulu flex pick that can go top, mid, or support, and the Corki flex pick that can go AD carry or mid. So let's talk about the Elise. All the things that I've already been talking about the Elise remain true right here. It's just probably the best jungler right now on the patch. Not only is the damage insane, but the gank pathing is insane in the sense that you have the huge range of the repel to be able to repel in the lane, especially with a lot of these lack of wardings that I've already declared, because green wards have been eliminated in the new patches in the preseason, making the ability to be able to repel in the lane from these areas that previously would have been warded but no longer can afford it to be warded. With the way that trinkets and green wards work, really open up a lot of gank paths for Elite, as well as the huge range of the cocoon allows for a lot of picks and hard CC to come in and setting up a lot of those ganks, just doing an insane amount of damage, as well as the tankiness that Elise gets kind of more towards the later half of the mid game. She does become kind of more of tanky, but I would suggest, if I was going to advise anything, to go for that new jungle item, which is the Luden's Echo for the jungler, especially because it's really good in the mid game and really gives Elise that extra damage and assassination potential. Even if she lands a cocoon solo, can give a lot of kill pressure to Elise. So I think the Elise is a really good jungle choice for Immortals, especially for the type of gameplay that they're historically shown to play so far in these first 2 days, and they obviously executed it well in game. Now let's go to the Corki pickup. The Corki pickup I really, really love, especially since it's a flex pick. The reason I rank Corki the top 1 ADC, while Lucian is still better than Corki in lane in terms of in lane dominance, I think Corki brings a lot more utility to a team, as well as a lot more mid game damage. Not only does Corki have a mixed damage, so it requires a little different itemization to be fully immune to his damage, and he has a slight true damage with his passive on the percentage of AD that he has. But what's most important is his ability to not only poke people out, but also the package. The package is insane. It gives you a massive amount of move speed to position yourself, but it also has a huge amount of range, allowing you to pretty much every time you pick up the package, get a kill somewhere on the map, regardless if Corki gets it or he assists somebody to get it. Every time the package is picked up, there should be a kill happening on the map within a couple minutes of that package being picked up and delivered. So that's kind of a very thing that has a lot of utility, pretty much an equalizer that also allows him to keep his Valkyrie. So it's just a huge amount of not only AoE damage over time, magic damage coming out from that ability, but also allows him to really proc the Thunder Lord, start doing even more burst damage. So a very burst ability centric ADC or ADC mid laner, depending on where it goes. Since it is a flex pick, it just does massive amounts of damage, allowing to get a lot of kills and snowball a mid game advantages, especially with the power spike of Trinity Force. Just does an insane amount of damage there. So instead of repeating the amount of damage that he constantly does, I think you guys get the picture of why Corki's just such a good mid lane. He'd be mid laner and ADC in the sense that he's able to push a mid game advantage and be able to snowball a mid game advantage, as well as take objectives when those members of the team are going to be dead. So I think it's a very good ADC. Into Lucian, it does do a little bit worse just because he can get bullied out, but we haven't seen the support matchups at this point in the draft, so I think Corki's a very safe pick to be taking for either Pole Belter or Wild Turtle at this point, since they can flex it. The next pick phase is going to be the fourth one outlined in green for you, going to be the second one for TIP. They're going to be picking up Twisted Fate for Gate as well as Alistar for Ken. Now, I really like the Alistar pickup. I think Alistar is a very good support right now, just in the sense that he provides a lot of engage, which is really what TIP needs. It's going to be nice instead of just having a pure kind of poke and skirt around teams. The Alistar just provides the really hard engage that TIP needs in their lineup at this point. So I mean, it does a massive it has the massive engage factor with the headbutt pulverize as well as flash headbutt pulverize, and then the ultimate really gives a nice huge tankiness factor to TIP, in the sense that now they actually have a real frontline threat, that it has relatively low cooldowns, meaning that they can facilitate a lot more dives with the Alistar as well if they move them around the map and roam properly. I think that there's a lot of chances for and potential for good roaming from Ken, especially on this. And remember that Immortals is going to be relatively squishy in that early game. While they're going to be very strong in terms of damage, if they can chain CC with, say, Gate and Ken both kind of jumping on the same target and maybe organizing that with a gank from Bebe, I think that they were able to kill a lot of these and not only start snowballing their chance, but also try to set back some of that mid-game advantage that Immortals would experience if they went even or excelled in a certain lane. So I think that the engage that Alistar provides is a perfect match for what TIP needs. I really wouldn't suggest any other supports in this situation. Now let's talk about the mid lane. Twisted Fate. Twisted Fate has a lot of wave clear, which is what TIP really needs right now. Honestly, I would suggest a Victor over Twisted Fate, just because, like, who are you going to be really ulting and gold carding at this point? While there's a lot of squishy targets, I think that by the time that Twisted Fate would ulti in, I think just the pure burst damage that can come down from Immortals is going to negate any global influence that Twisted Fate has, as well as just the damage that he has isn't going to be as amazing as it could be. He's still really good in the sense that you can go Roa on him and try to scale in the later game, which I wouldn't suggest. I would suggest going for just a pure amount of damage as fast as you can, trying to make him the biggest mid-game threat that he can be. Also, the global nature of his ult and the gold card allows you to try to set up picks around the map, as well as having the ability to channel and chain with the Alistar stun, so there's a bit of synergy there and in the ability to create picks and such. So I think it's a decently strong mid lane pick, especially if you're going to be blind picking, if you don't think that Lulu's going mid, since it still is being flexed, so kind of safe. Honestly, in my opinion, I would tell TIP to pick up the Victor. I think Victor provides provides even more wave clear than the Twisted Fate, allowing them to kind of counter siege very effectively in this really fast-paced game and really try to put roadblocks and speed bumps into the Immortals game plan, because every moment that this Immortals team spends on the map, and the longer it goes, the more of an advantage that TIP gets, just because of the scaling of that. Especially a Victor, I think, scales way better into the late game than a Twisted Fate, just kind of allowing them to not only delay to that point, but also have a lot more burst damage, as well as just AoE magic damage that a Victor gives. So I think that would have been the smarter choice for Gate in this, but Twisted Fate isn't necessarily a terrible pick either. Moving on to the fifth picking phase, they're going to be picking up the Fiora for Huni and the Janna for Adrian. Now, this is really where it shows me that Immortals really knows how to play towards the strong points in the meta. And if you've watched a lot of my recent videos, I've always been talking about how teams should never have to play past 40 minutes unless there is a specific scenario in which that allows for that, and certain mishaps happen in the execution of team comps that are crafted. So I can get into that more in some of my LCK analysis, where that has actually happened and is showed to be true. But for specifically the NA/LCS, there really shouldn't be no games that go past 35 minutes if you know what you're doing in terms of executing the strong points in the meta. And the Fiora pick is exactly that. I'm really surprised that Fiora got this far through the pick phase. I think that it would have been much better if TIP tried to pick it up and steal it away. I think that there should have been a lot more priority on the Fiora pick. But then again, after everything that Immortals has picked, they've been pretty much getting the number one position or number one tier for each position in almost every single draft phase that they've had so far. So I think that Immortals really got away with things that wouldn't happen if they went up against a team who was a little bit more prepared and had a bit of more breadth in their champion pool to be able to ban out some of those really high tier, S tier, champions for each role. So I think Fiora, for the reason that she got through, it's just insane. She does an immense amount of damage in terms of attack damage as well as pure damage with her passive on those little points that spawn on the enemy champions, as well as her ult provides a really nice team fight utility, meaning that if she does get dove like 2v3 or anything like that, if she's able to blow up one target with the ult on it, that healing factor allows her to continue the fight and just do more and more sustained damage. She is an insane split push threat, and she scales very well into the late game. She can pick up that Ravenous Hydra early, which gives her a huge amount of sustain in lane as well as damage, but then near towards the end of the mid game, and if it does get to late game, she can pick up a little more tankier items, Black Cleaver, and then switch to a Titanic and not do more AoE damage like that, but also scale off those health and tank factors that she can get. I think she's just very strong, does a lot of damage, is really good in not only dueling up into the mid game, but also if she gets ahead, she pretty much can roll over any lane and push right up to those inhibitor turrets just by herself, especially with how the armor on turrets has been reduced coming out of the preseason onto this patch of 6.1. So I think that's a really good pick coming out from Immortals and Huni. Now let's talk about this Janna pick. This Janna pick I think is really good in the context of what TIP has drafted and the type of gameplay that Immortals wants to do. You might be thinking to yourself that there could be better and stronger engaged supports that Adrian could play, but I think he doesn't even need to do that. At the point where the Alistar is drafted, having Janna as that form of disengage really tries to negate the only real form of hard engage besides a direct TP in by a Twisted Fate with gold card would have. Being able to Q away and Q disengage a headbutt that is in motion and stop that combo from happening is not only insane, but also the healing factor from her ult and the disengage that provides is really good, as well as the shielding for Corki will help him in this lane where Lucian's going to be poking a lot with the piercing light Qs and doing a lot of damage, but it also kind of buffs up the Corki and gives him the ability to trade more efficiently, as well as a dual range lane against the melee support of Alistar also kind of gives him a bit of an advantage, while I would still give the pure damage advantage to Alistar Lucian in the bottom lane. This lane is very constructed in a way that they can win and execute the bottom lane in a winning fashion without forcing a lane swap, which would only set Huni behind, because Huni really wants to 1v1 whoever is picked for the top lane because they don't know at that point. Now let's get into the last pick of this game and the most disappointing pick of this game, which is going to be the Dr. Mundo for Fen in the top lane. Honestly, why? If you've watched any of my previous videos for analysis of the day one of NALCS, I don't know why NA has this infatuation with Mundo. It literally makes no sense, especially when the meta is really pointing towards these fast-paced games that are ending before 35 minutes if executed correctly. Honestly, I don't know why you would pick this into Fiora too. Mundo just gets completely destroyed by Fiora because not only does he not have any wave clear, but he has literally nothing to deal with the kit of Fiora, since especially early on when he doesn't have that extra health stats, the use of his abilities really drains him in terms of health cost in that sense, but also just the pure damage of the Fiora and the true damage really makes it impossible for him to ever try to actually out-trade the Fiora, even if he gets gank assistance. So Fiora is pretty much guaranteed to win this lane anyways, and I kind of see why they want to hedge their bets on this late game thing, but seeing how their team comp is relatively constructed for the mid game, and then they just throw all their kind of eggs into one basket with this, I wouldn't even say eggs into one basket, but just kind of have this odd pick of a Mundo who isn't even going to be effective until they get to the late game, where they're going to lose a lot of the damage on all of their champions, especially the Nidalee, and specifically. I really think I would have preferred to see a Lissandra coming out for Fen. I think while the Lissandra-Fiora matchup is still pretty much losing, it's not as bad as a Mundo matchup, and I think that the Lissandra provides a lot more team fight utility that the Mundo just cannot provide in the mid game, and I think it would have been really good, especially against the kind of squishy, high-paced mid-game lineup of Immortals, where Lissandra would have been able to really crush the tempos of Immortal if they would have been able to get a Lissandra ult on, say, Turtle, which there are plenty of opportunities to with his mispositioning and other such things, and I'm going to get into that tomorrow when I make a video about how TSM can win against Immortal, how they need to fix their drafts, and how Immortal is definitely not what their name claims to be. Just their read on the meta has really made them very strong. So let's kind of analyze these team comps as a whole. The Immortals team comp, like I said, is a very skirmish-based mid-game team comp in the sense that they want to end this game before 30 minutes, and they do that. And the way that they do that is just because because of just the amount of damage they have in combination with Thunderlords, it really makes that viable. But also, like, they don't need, with the changes to the resists on turrets, like I said, they don't really need a main objective taker like a Tristana or something. They're going to be able to take objectives via team fighting and via getting picks. So I think, like, if Reignover can get Huni ahead in the top lane, they've pretty much met one of their win conditions. I think that the Lulu v Twisted Fate might have a bit trouble in lane, but I think that her damage is just going to be too insane in the mid game, as well as the global pressure that she's going to have with the TP. I think that's just going to be too strong and just ultimately going to have more of a team fight presence than the Twisted Fate. So I'm thinking that Immortals wants to, go to lane and within the first 5 minutes get an advantage in lane, but then kind of transition that to a skirmish type gameplay where they're just going to be snowballing objectives and snowballing lanes of objectives, getting as many turrets as possible, pushing into the base as early as possible. And I think once that first inhibitor falls for TIP, if it happens before 20 minutes, they're pretty much guaranteed to lose the game at that point, and that ends up what happens in this gameplay. So I think that this very, meta, I'm going to say meta, skirmish team is very good in the sense that no other NA team is really displayed besides Energy, like the read on how the meta can allow you to craft these team comps that can end the game so fast, especially with the changes to death timers, warding, and turret resists. So I think that it's really nice to see that Immortals has caught on to this, especially as someone who spends time analyzing different champion selects in games from all regions. I think it's very nice to see that someone is actually executing upon what the meta is showing as the strongest points. Now let's go into TIP. So TIP has a fairly, decent poke comp, I would say. You have the Mundo Q, which is going to do a decent amount. You have Twisted Fate poking and wave clearing. You have the Nidalee Q and Piercing Lights from Lucian, as well as the culling that can be used to poke out and wave clear fairly rapidly. I think that that's, a decent team theme, that it would be a decent team comp theme that could be well executed. I just think that they should have chose something like a Lissandra to be able to match the mid-game pressure that Immortals has, and I think if they would have had the Lissandra, they would have been able to put enough speed bumps that they would have actually had a chance against the Immortals lineup. If I had to give it advantage, obviously I would give it to Immortals, just because it seems like they have such a fast-paced mid-game threat-based team comp that really TIP doesn't have the tools to answer, especially with the disengage from Adrian with that Janna. I really don't think any chance for TIP to engage and try to turn the tide of any team fight really is just instantly going to be negated by that disengage factor, and it's going to be really hard for them to be able to take any advantages in this game, especially with that Mundo pick where they're pretty much going to have to wait until it's 30 plus minutes just to be able to have even leveled team fights if everything's gone even at that point, which I suspect it won't, because they're going to be able to do so much damage on the Immortals side with the type of comp that they have crafted. So I would definitely give the advantage to Immortals. Honestly, I like TIP's thought process here in the sense that everything was good until the Mundo pick. I think if they would have picked up the Lissandra, they would have been a lot more competitive in this game. I've already kind of said that and analyzed why that would be a way better pick with her not only magic AoE damage, but her ability to, point and click and ultimately CC anybody, or just go right in the middle of these team fights, ult herself, and just try to cause discord and disarray in the lineup of Immortals. And you can kind of tell Immortals, while they're, winning a lot of these games really fast, I don't think that definitely means that they're the best team. I think they're the best team in terms of drafting. I don't think they're the best team in terms of talent or ability to win. I just think once teams catch on to how the meta and how 6.1 should be played, kind of like how I'm analyzing these games, if you watched a lot of my previous videos, I think then people are really definitely going to be able to take down this Immortals team. While TIP, I think they have the means here to actually win a couple games, even though people have been kind of shitting on them as the worst team in NA. I think that there's potential for them in their drafting phase and in their bans to really work on that and almost try to give themselves more of an advantage going into these games, regardless of what the skill matchup is. So hope you guys enjoyed. I'm going to be doing the rest of the NA games probably tomorrow because I've done a bunch of videos today. So remember to rate, comment, and subscribe. If you don't agree or you agree, tell me in the comments. Whatever happens. If you're butthurt, I really don't see how you could be butthurt here, but I've had it happen to me. So hope you guys enjoyed. Peace.